So now you've been so good as to come to our Armavir, Mr. Hypnotist? Well, we're not afraid of you here. Don't pretend to be dumb. We know what kind of goose you are. The citizen brought the cat to the police, dragging the poor beast by its front paws, bound with a green necktie, giving it little kicks to make the cat walk not otherwise than on its hind legs. You quit that, cried the citizen, accompanied by whistling boys. Quit playing the fool. It won't do. Kindly walk like everybody else. The black cat only rolled its martyred eyes. Being deprived by nature of the gift of speech, it could not vindicate itself in any way. The poor beast owed its salvation first of all to the police, and then to its owner, a venerable old widow. As soon as the cat was delivered to the police station, it was realized that the citizen smelled rather strongly of alcohol, as a result of which his evidence was at once subject to doubt. And the little old lady, having meanwhile learned from neighbors that her cat had been hauled in, rushed to the station and arrived in the nick of time. She gave the most flattering references for the cat, explained that she had known it for 5 years, since it was a kitten, that she vouched for it as for her own self, and proved that it had never been known to do anything bad and had never been to Moscow. As it had been born in Armavir, so there it had grown up and learned the catching of mice. The cat was untied and returned to its owner, having tasted grief, it's true, and having learned by experience the meaning of error and slander. Besides cats, some minor unpleasantnesses befell certain persons. Detained for a short time were, in Leningrad, the citizens Wolman and Wolper, in Saratov, Kiev, and Kharkov, 3 Volodins, in Kazan, 1 Volok, and in Penza, this for totally unknown reasons, Doctor of Chemical Sciences Vechinkovich. True, he was enormously tall, very swarthy and dark-haired. In various places, besides that, 9 Korovins, 4 Korovkins and 2 Karavavs were caught. A certain citizen was taken off the Sebastopol train and bound at the Belgrade station. This citizen had decided to entertain his fellow passengers with card tricks. In Yaroslavl, a citizen came to a restaurant at lunchtime carrying a Primus which he had just picked up from being repaired. The moment they saw him, the 2 doormen abandoned their posts in the coachroom and fled, and after them fled all the restaurant's customers and personnel. With that, in some inexplicable fashion, the girl at the cash register had all the money disappear on her. There was much else, but one cannot remember everything. Again and again justice must be done to the investigation. Every attempt was made not only to catch the criminals, but to explain all their mischief. And it all was explained, and these explanations cannot but be acknowledged as sensible and irrefutable. Representatives of the investigation and experienced psychiatrists established that members of the criminal gang, or one of them perhaps, suspicion fell mainly on Koroviev, were hypnotists of unprecedented power, who could show themselves not in the place where they actually were, but in imaginary, shifted positions. Along with that, they could freely suggest to those they encountered that certain things or people were where they actually were not, and, contrariwise, could remove from the field of vision things or people that were in fact to be found within that field of vision. In the light of such explanations, decidedly everything was clear, even what the citizens found most troublesome, the apparently quite inexplicable invulnerability of the cat, shot at in apartment number 50 during the attempt to put him under arrest. There had been no cat on the chandelier, naturally, nor had anyone even thought of returning their fire. The shooters had been aiming at an empty spot, while Koroviev, having suggested that the cat was acting up on the chandelier, was free to stand behind the shooters' backs, mugging and enjoying his enormous, albeit criminally employed, capacity for suggestion. It was he, of course, who had set fire to the apartment by spilling the benzene. Styopa Likodayev had, of course, never gone to any Yalta. Such a stunt was beyond even Koroviev's powers, nor had he sent any telegrams from there. After fainting in the jeweler's wife's apartment, frightened by a trick of Koroviev's, who had shown him a cat holding a pickled mushroom on a fork, he lay there until Koroviev, jeering at him, capped him with a shaggy felt hat and sent him to the Moscow airport, having first suggested to the representatives of the investigation who went to meet Styopa that Styopa would be getting off the plane from Sebastopol. True, the Criminal Investigation Department in Yalta maintained that they had received the barefoot Styopa, and had sent telegrams concerning Styopa to Moscow, but no copies of these telegrams were found in the files, from which the sad but absolutely invincible conclusion was drawn that the hypnotizing gang was able to hypnotize at an enormous distance, and not only individual persons but even whole groups of them. Under these circumstances, the criminals were able to drive people of the sturdiest psychic makeup out of their minds. To say nothing of such trifles as the pack of cards in the pocket of someone in the stalls, the women's disappearing dresses, or the meowing beret, or other things of that sort. Such stunts can be pulled by any professional hypnotist of average ability on any stage, including the uncomplicated trick of tearing the head off the master of ceremonies. The talking cat was also sheer nonsense. To present people with such a cat, it is enough to have a command of the basic principles of ventriloquism, and scarcely anyone will doubt that Korolyev's art went significantly beyond those principles. Yes, the point here lay not at all in packs of cards, or the false letters in Nikanor Ivanovitch's briefcase. These were all trifles. It was he, Korolev, who had sent Berlioz to certain death under the tramcar. It was he who had driven the poor poet Ivan homeless crazy, he who had made him have visions, see ancient Yerushalayim and tormenting dreams, and sun-scorched, waterless bald mountain with 3 men hanging on posts. It was he and his gang who had made Margarita Nikolaevna and her housekeeper Natasha disappear from Moscow. Incidentally, the investigation considered this matter with special attention. It had to find out if the 2 women had been abducted by the gang of murderers and arsonists or had fled voluntarily with the criminal company. On the basis of the absurd and incoherent evidence of Nikolai Ivanovich, and considering the strange and insane note Margarita Nikolaevna had left for her husband, the note in which she wrote that she had gone off to become a witch, as well as the circumstance that Natasha had disappeared leaving all her clothes behind, the investigation concluded that both mistress and housekeeper, like many others, had been hypnotized, and had thus been abducted by the band. There also emerged the probably quite correct thought that the criminals had been attracted by the beauty of the 2 women. Yet what remained completely unclear to the investigation was the gang's motive in abducting the mental patient who called himself the Master from the psychiatric clinic. This they never succeeded in establishing, nor did they succeed in obtaining the abducted man's last name. Thus he vanished forever under the dead alias of number 118 from the first building. And so, almost everything was explained, and the investigation came to an end, as everything generally comes to an end. Several years passed, and the citizens began to forget Woland, Koroviev and the rest. Many changes took place in the lives of those who suffered from Woland and his company, and however trifling and insignificant those changes are, they still ought to be noted. Georges Bengalski, for instance, after spending 3 months in the clinic, recovered and left it, but had to give up his work at the Variety, and that at the hottest time, when the public was flocking after tickets. The memory of black magic and its exposure proved very tenacious. Bengalski left the Variety, for he understood that to appear every night before 2,000 people, to be inevitably recognized and endlessly subjected to jeering questions of how he liked it better, with or without his head, was much too painful. And, besides that, the master of ceremonies had lost a considerable dose of his gaiety, which is so necessary in his profession. He remained with the unpleasant, burdensome habit of falling, every spring during the full moon, into a state of anxiety, suddenly clutching his neck, looking around fearfully and weeping,